The one, who in Arda is called Ilúvatar, and he made first the Ainur, the holy ones, that were the offspring of his thought, and they were with him before aught else was made. And he spoke to them, propounding to them themes of music, and they sang before him, and he was glad. But for a long while they sang only each alone, or but few together, while the rest hearkened, for each comprehended only that part of the mind of Ilúvatar from which he came, and in the understanding of their brethren they grew but slowly. Yet ever as they listened, they came to deeper understanding, and increased in unison and harmony. And it came to pass that Ilúvatar called together all the Ainur and declared to them a mighty theme, unfolding to them things greater and more wonderful than he had yet revealed. And the glory of its beginning and the splendor of its end amazed the Ainur, so that they bowed before Ilúvatar and were silent. Then Ilúvatar said to them, "Of the theme that I have declared to you, I will now that ye make in harmony together a great music. And since I have kindled you with the flame imperishable, ye shall show forth your powers in adorning this theme, each with his own thoughts and devices, if you will. But I will sit and hearken, and be glad that through you great beauty has been wakened into song."
Good morning, afternoon, everyone. I'm Lady Balefire, and welcome to the first part of our Silmarillion read-along. And I am very excited to be here. We have some great guests. We have Gadfly Fiction, Manetheren, and hopefully High King Feanor. He's having some audio issues, so I am really hoping that he can sort them out, because I really want to talk to him, and I know that he loves this stuff, and yeah. So hopefully, let me check the messages and see if I have anything. Okay. So we'll just wait, and hopefully he can come back in, and we'll just see what happens. And I haven't done this for a while, so I'm kind of messing up on the technical side. But yeah, let's just say hello to everyone. How you doing, Gadfly?
Pretty good. It's a great way to both end and start the week with some real nice.
Oh yeah, let me see if I can. Oops, what did I just do? That was a pop out. Like toggle. How do you do this? Wait, there you go. Yeah, you want to show us your book? Oh my god, that's beautiful. Is that like the leather bound copy of it?
It's kind of leather like, on the spine, but not on the.
Is there illustrations in that?
Oh, there's more than just illustrations.
Oh boy! Oh god, that's so pretty. Oh, we got map porn.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yep, I can't see it.
Yeah, that is really cool.
Is that's the map with all his little personal markings on it?
Wow.
It's got some of his personal markings, yeah. But like notations and stuff beside it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's fantastic. Just looking through this and seeing where his mind was. And then there's more as well. It's another map.
Oh, that is a beautiful map.
Yep.
Is that the map of Balerion?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the finished one. It's like a before and after, I think.
Wow, that is really, really cool.
Yeah, it's a fantastic piece, and it's got the sketches in it. It's probably similar ones that are in Amanda Manetheren's.
Oh, there. That is really, really cool.
It's, yeah.
So how are you doing, Nathan? Like you got you got a nice copy too. You want to share?
I certainly do.
Time.
Yeah.
That is
nice
pretty. Oh wow.
foil there. And then with the binding having Elvish
Wow. Oof, Elvish.
then I can take off, and this is where we get similarities to Gadflies without the dust cover.
Oh wow, that is really pretty.
You know, it's such a wonderful thing. Now I will say, my maps are much smaller, so I got map envy.
Oh, that is really cool. It's the same
But
thing. Yeah, it's just
yeah,
a smaller version.
yep. And I'm telling you what, this was a gift from my kids to me at Christmas. So
Oh, that's
when
awesome.
this illustrated edition got released in November last year, if I remember right.
Wow, that's really cool.
And so I said, that's the only thing I want. And so they're like, okay, well, that means I don't have to shop. I'm like, yep, exactly.
Yep.
and it's got a nice little silver little.
Oh, I love those little like bookmark things that are in books. Like they're so cool.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that is really cool. And I think it's really awesome to have like an heirloom copy of one of those books. I would love to get like a version of Lord of the Rings at least with that. And my copy, it's so grungy. I mean, I have this. I went and we went to Half Price Books and
classic.
Yeah, it's just I think there's maps in there somewhere, like, but there's no illustrations or anything, and it has that kind of like musty smell. So I'm hoping to get a new one at some point. But
some of my favorite books that like physical books that I have are books that I got either from professors who didn't need them anymore or from used bookstores, and they have all the person's notations in it. Like I'm reading the notes of somebody who was reading it and seeing what they were thinking about it.
Yeah, that's really cool. Like when you find somebody's notes in it, like that's neat.
Yeah, so, see, I'm sitting here with this, and I'm going trying to give it that little smoky kind of library smell.
I know. I like your pipe there. It's very Tolkien-esque. Are you got the like Hobbit weed from the Shire?
Nope. I got J.R.R. Tolkien's blend capstan.
Oh, nice. That's cool.
It is tasty.
I know. I really like the smell of tobacco smoke. It is like really nice.
Yeah. So yeah, this is a great addition to have. It beats out the little mini hardbound one that I have that I'll bring it next time to show.
Oh, that's awesome. Cool.
Show what I upgraded to.
Yeah. So so when was the first time you guys read the Silmarillion?
Shortly after reading The Lord of the Rings for me. So I was about 9.
Whoa!
That is very young to read that.
Oh my! Show off.
you don't really grasp everything that's going on, but
yeah, I read that like the first 2 parts of it like 3 or 4 times, and so I finally just read Lord of the Rings this year. I've never read it before, which is totally embarrassing on my part, but
no, stop.
I read it and I really loved it. It was so fun, and I did it with the like White Cloaks read along. That's why I wanted to do the Silmarillion, and I was thinking like, okay, what do I read next? Everyone's all like, oh, go read The Hobbit, and then like I started reading it, and then I get to the part where it's like, I am Gandalf, and Gandalf is me, and I kept thinking of that like Raskin and Bass clip, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it came from the book, and I'm Gandalf. Like, I can't believe this is real, and Gandalf means me.
That was such a great animation. Like I love that one.
Yeah, it's funny. I know when I do Zach stream with him, like on Wednesday nights, like he always uses it to tease like Flaccid Phoenix. It's so you always see it, and it's like really funny and kind of cheesy. And I'm like, nope, that's in the book. And I'm not like really. I wasn't like really into The Hobbit after reading Lord of the Rings. I'm like, I don't know if I could do this. So I think it was like Feanor that was telling me to like try reading the Silmarillion.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hey, Booster's in the chat.
Yeah, I think
Thank
for
you for
me,
coming, Boosh. And we have like Clifton 3D and like Lurking.
Yeah.
And then
So
we have Boosh.
Yeah, for
Yes.
me, it was right after I read Lord of the Rings, and I did my first Lord of the Rings read right before the movies came out. So
Wow.
I was in my early 20s, and then I read through The Hobbit for the first time, which was a fun little quick read comparatively. And I'm like, okay, well, I keep on hearing about this thing called the Silmarillion.
Yeah, I know.
And
I'm not very good with the
and
names.
and so I went, I bought it, and it was a hardcover, thin hardcover that I think my brother has it somewhere. I can't remember, but I read it and I'm like, boy, this is great. So I went right back and read Lord of the Rings, and it just kind of blew things up into a much larger picture, which is kind of, I think, the purpose of this book, really. I mean, it doesn't have the same type of prose or anything that Tolkien typically has for a narrative book, but at the same time, you get a lot of, I think, perspective in what he writes in here about why he went about it, I think.
Yeah, I really thought that was interesting. So I didn't look up anything else than what was in the initial book. I'm gonna get my notes out here. So the Silmarillion it's basically like a history of the theology and like the history of the Middle Earth, and like kind of like the I guess because these two chapters that we're doing, you guys want to tell me how to say the first one? It's Ainulindalë.
Ainulindalë.
Ainulindalë. There we
All
go.
right,
Ainu, yes. I kept thinking about that because the Japanese people called the Ainu, so I just like remember that. Ainulindalë. Okay.
So, and I've always pronounced it Ainulindalë. I think I'm adding an N in there when I do that.
Yeah, there's an extra little N in there.
But. Yeah, okay. But it's such a pretty word, though, that
it looks beautiful on the like
language he
page.
created is beautiful to listen to when it's spoken. Like,
yeah, well, and that was part of the other thing with the editions that you and I have, Gadfly. They have in the back, it's not just it's an appendix of Sindarin words.
I haven't even gotten to the appendices yet.
Along with the index of the glossary type stuff. So I would, you can almost do a complete, like with the titles of chapters. You can't do it with a Colabet.
Yeah.
But you can do it with Valaquenta, Kenta Silmarillion, Ainulindalë.
Yeah,
you can
that's really
actually
cool.
do a breakdown of the words and how you could literally render them, and then how Tolkien presents them as a translation. Wow. It's really cool.
Yeah, that is really neat. Like I have not gotten into there. I don't know. I have fibromyalgia, and sometimes like it takes me a little bit to sort of process stuff like that. And linguistics has never been my strong suit. So
yeah, that's why you got that guy on.
Yeah. I cannot see this. It's the brothers. Hello, thank you. I do not know why it's like covering this. The brothers Arda. Okay, thank you so much. Glad to see you here. I said everyone have this book club. Awesome. Yeah. Oh, you were directed from Feanor from over on Twitter. Oh, thank you so much. Oh, is he back? Oh, I hope this works. Oh my goodness. Oh, please work. We're having technical issues with Feanor, and I really hope that we can get it figured out. If we don't get him on this week, I am going to make sure we get a different streaming service. Like this one we're using now is called Melon, and it's a bit of a mess. And so I'm probably just going to go and get my own service. So back to what were we talking about? Okay, the names. So the Ainulindalë. Yeah. So we're doing the Ainulindalë and the Valaquenta, and But just back to the history of what the Silmarillion is, when I was in the introduction by Christopher Tolkien, this was published posthumously, and they were taken, like, the information in this book was taken from notebooks that were as early as 1917. So this is all of the stuff that, like, Tolkien was doing to start writing Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and everything else. And it was intended to be a compilation of poems, annals, and oral tales made long after the events from sources of great diversity. And I think with these two ones, you could really see how different the sources are and how Tolkien wrote in certain styles. And yeah, I just thought that was really interesting.
Well, you can really see the inspiration of the idea of creating a mythology in these ones, right? Because you can look at the Ainulindalë and see, like, the Book of Genesis. This is like the first 3 lines of the Book of Genesis, expanded a bit, and then the Valaquenta is like you can see stuff from, like, from Hesiod's Theogony, and snippets from things like the Iliad and the Odyssey, the Aeneid. You can see the influences of Beowulf in all these types of things. Although Beowulf more inspires Lord of the Rings than the Silmarillion, but yeah, it is straight up mythology stuff, and that's why I think a lot of people are turned off by it, because they're expecting a typical narrative structure, act system and blah 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 blah, and so they don't quite see it as the amazing piece of literature it is.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Like, it really felt like when I was reading the two books, like the Ainulindalë I'm gonna say this right. Really reminded me of, like, reading the Old Testament, and then the next one was like reading the New Testament. Like, the language is completely different, and I really appreciated that. It's amazing that Tolkien is such a wordsmith that I'm just like, wow, the same person wrote this, and it's just beautiful. And I just wanted to highlight this really fast. I think it was on here, but the brothers Arda were saying that the first few stories were dedicated to Edith, but then as things grew, Tolkien's ambition grew until he sought to dedicate all to England. The 3 great sources of inspiration for Tolkien were his family, wife, Christopher, his faith, and England himself. Yeah, that is really interesting.
Yeah, the Hobbit was a story that he created for his children, and Christopher was the one who convinced him to write it down.
Wow.
And his faith is a massive part as well, right? Yeah. He's Catholic, right? But his mother was initially Protestant, converted to Catholicism, and her family entirely disowned her.
Yeah.
And so nuts. He was raised by the single mom in the 19th century. And the faith, the community of people of faith that he was attached to was such an important part of his development.
Mm-hmm.
That is really interesting, and it was interesting. Like, brothers Arda was saying that Tolkien and Howard are both grouped within the fantasy genre when they predate the genre, and were honestly very much far above fantasy. There's this mythology of England and Texas. That is an interesting take. I definitely can see kind of what you mean by that, especially with Tolkien and Howard. I'm not, like, really familiar with his works. I think he wrote God, what did he write? Like John yeah. No,
no, that wasn't Howard.
No, he wrote like John Carter, wasn't it? I'm just getting this wrong. Oh yeah, she was originally Protestant. Yeah, that's pretty wild. So yeah, I know what's really interesting is I started reading. I found when we were looking for these books with my boyfriend, I found a book called Letters to Father Christmas, which was written by Tolkien. And what he did every year that he, like, when he first had kids and they were old enough to understand, he would write letters as Father Christmas, and he made this whole mythology about it. And what was really interesting about that is you could see how his kids are kind of growing up and how they understand like his writing career and how their sort of development as people themselves, because you can kind of see like who is still believing in this, like, and one of the people that were really into it was like Christopher. Like he kept writing back to like Father Christmas even though he was older and he had gone off to boarding school. And it's really cool to see how his kids grew up and how like you could see early on that his relationship with Christopher was going to be really special. And of course Christopher had this published after he died, and I think that is really awesome that he did so much to get this out to us. So
Yeah, his was definitely a life where he spent not just honoring his father, but expressing through that the publications his love and appreciation for who his father was to him. It was a very passionate relationship, I think, between the two of them that is very tender when you sit there and you look at all the stuff that Christopher did post 1970s. It just really was sweet.
They were writing about the subject matter long after Christopher left the nest, right? Like, and started his own family.
Yeah, that is just really interesting. So, shall we dive into the actual text itself?
You betcha.
Yeah.
So I made something here. Let's share. Let me see if I can get a screen. Okay, I understand. Let's go. Let's not that. Here we go. I made a hierarchy of everyone in here. So the Ainulindalë starts out with, it's basically like in the beginning. It's the in the beginning story, and we start out with the main creator god is Ilúvatar, who is also known as Eru or the One. And so in this little, I did this color coordinated to try to make it easier so people could understand, or at least for myself. And I don't know if I can make this bigger. Let me see what happens if I make this like the whole screen. I might lose it on my end. No, it's just gonna, oh, maybe I can make it bigger on that. Does that work on the screen? Let's see. Oh, okay, cool. Okay, so, shoot, I'm gonna have to scroll this. Let me scroll this up. Oops. Gosh,
there you go.
There
it's all fit in there.
Okay, cool. All right, so we start off with Ilúvatar, and what I thought was really interesting with the creation story of this is that he thought the Ainur, or the Valar, as they're later called, into existence. And then the way they communicate is with song and sound. Now, I think this is really just a fascinating idea because it's very unique, and it immediately drew like comparisons in my mind to something, and I don't know a lot about this, but I know you're a classicist, Gadfly, so maybe you could fill me in on this. Is that what was I going to say? It reminded me of the idea of the harmony of the spheres, which I think was around Aristotle idea, where everything sort of has its like kind of like its own vibration, and that the whole world's like kind of when everything is in harmony with each other, it's sort of, you explain it, I think you know what I'm trying to say. So I meant to look this up earlier.
The harmony of the spheres is derived from Platonic philosophy and Pythagoreanism, and you can see this with with Eru the One, right? Because in Neoplatonism, the idea of being in existence extends from the One. So the One, in the One's super creativity, mind comes out of being, and then from mind, everything else stems, right? So the idea of the sort of harmonic resonance of the spheres and stuff, you can take from that in the Pythagorean tradition, the the balance of numbers with each other. And so the Pythagoreans had the idea of the perfect fifth in music.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And that was an important aspect to understanding the resonance of the world around them, because everything was numerical in structure. Everything was numbers.
Yeah.
And so the harmony of the numbers working together is something that perpetually continues the act of creation.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I thought that was interesting too as like an audio engineer, because it's like, you know, you look the numbers translate into wavelength, and wavelength is like really the glue that holds everything together. I mean, light is a wavelength, sound is a wavelength, like the transfer of energy. So I just thought that was really interesting, because obviously classical idea, and it comes like, it's very like not like a Christian thing, but it kind of melds both, because you have somebody creating the music. And yeah.
Well, it's one of those funny things where you look on history and these ideas that come up, and both Plato and Aristotle and several other philosophers around the time came up with the idea through their own logical powers that there had to be a single entity that started all of creation. And that's what led to the Catholic a motion in the Catholic Church to canonize Socrates, to make Socrates a saint. It didn't pass because you couldn't have a pagan be a saint, right? But but just this idea of somebody recognizing this aspect of there being one entity above all, responsible for all of creation, using only their logical faculties.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And the brothers Art asked an interesting question, and that the music battles that he noted on his channel, each song represents one of the three ages. The first two end in victory for Melkor, and the third in defeat of evil. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just gonna say I don't have any thoughts, because I'm just reading the chapters as we read them, and so I'm totally new on this, but maybe you guys can answer that.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I took from it. And it's funny because this is like the second time I've read through it. So this has been about 15 or so years since I've read this. And so reading this again, you know, I didn't get it the first time. This time I read it and I'm like, okay, he has cemented the idea of history is already a done thing, and now we're just in the presentation of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so all these things, like, you know, he says, like, even Melkor's discordance was actually born out of his own thought, and
I was going to mention that when we got on that, is that it's interesting as he goes along in making these things. It's like, you know, he made Melkor too, which sort of goes into the idea that like there has to be balance among all things. Like it's it reminds me of like the Hermetic principles, where it's like, you know, things are what they are for what they're not, and for the existence of one thing, like I'm totally butchering this, but it suggests that like the opposite is there. And I think that's like polarity is like, it's like the third principle. I'm probably gonna like mess this up.
Well, it's for me, like when I'm reading this, it's like, you know, you have all the other 6 or 7 Valar who all have a united will that is the same will of
as a creator.
Ilúvatar.
Yeah.
But he created Melkor, who is the strongest of them all, and created him with his own desire, his own will, which automatically, because it is different from Ilúvatar, it is an automatic discordance with it. And so even those themes that Melkor tries to create that he thinks are his own are still part of the design of Ilúvatar.
That was so interesting.
Yeah, so there's a real sovereignty aspect to Ilúvatar that it gets presented in this opening chapter that I thought was really fascinating.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too, because
it's an explanation for why evil exists.
Yeah.
because evil comes out of an individual's desires for themselves above all else. So so Melkor desires power, and he's jealous and envious of Ilúvatar's super creativity, right? So Ilúvatar can creatio ex nihilo, he can something from nothing. Melkor cannot do that. So he's envious of that. He desires control and influence and all that sort of stuff, and so evil comes out of him from that. But in an individual's act of evil, it does two things. One, it shows the necessity of good. So the necessity of Eru's existence or God's existence is there because evil. So there's evil in the world, then God has to exist. And two, it provides an opportunity for good to flourish.
Yeah, and I also kind of thought
if it doesn't have something to operate
to fight against,
right?
Yeah, like the opposition again, the polarity is there, and I thought that was interesting too, because there's this sort of there's a question of like predetermination there. It's like it reminded me of the part like in Westworld, the TV show, and where the robots are starting to realize that like, oh, they can think and kind of remember stuff, and then they start wondering, I'm like, what they're doing and trying to get out of wherever they are. Is it something that they just thought of themselves, or is it part of their programming? And I was kind of wondering this question, like, it seemed when I was reading that there was some element that like maybe Tolkien was trying to say that everyone has their own fate. And is this like something that's perhaps set, or is it like, is there some free will there?
Fate for Tolkien, he goes on in this in some of his letters. Fate is everything that has happened up until this point in time. So everything that you have done, everything that other people have done, has led to this exact point in time. So you are fated to be in this point in time because of all past actions. But it's not a forward-looking fate. You have in your moment choice and culpability and all that sort of stuff that you have your own will. With Eru and God, for Tolkien, being outside of the bounds of time, he can see all of time.
He can see everything, right? Yeah.
But he can see everybody's choices that they make.
Yeah, or where it might go,
impact and go down, right? So it's not predestination, but it's foreknowledge of destination.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. That's kind of like the Wheel of Time, because they really like go with that, and they make it literal thing, like there's a pattern and some people get above it. And that was another Wheel of Time similarity with, like, if you guys remember in the Ogier and in the Age of Legends, the Aes Sedai were singing, and they would sing things into existence. So I thought that was a nice nod there. And also, like, it's kind of the same thing with who's fated to do what, and it seemed to be kind of the same thing. Yeah, that's a good point, Brothers Arda. The Tolkien, interestingly, also proposes the notion that being good means you're not a safe individual. Both him and Howard propose this notion, be it with Aragorn or Conan. Yes, that's Conan. Thank you. It's Conan. Yes, thank you. I know. I was just reading that in my like Pulp Fiction stuff.
Yeah,
and
you can only be good if you are choosing to do good.
Yeah, the choice is there. That's also the same thing that was interesting with this part, but yeah, Debbie was saying, I think this part of Melkor part also comes from the Catholicism, where Saint Lin was one of the highest angels because of his pride he fell from heaven. Yeah, yep. I agree with that too, and you can definitely see that here. So I wanted to explain this diagram thing I made. So you have Ilúvatar the One, and he made the Ainur or the Valar. And there are these are rough like power ranking. I know that they say some of them are a little bit different, and the you have on the left hand side is the Valar, which are the guys, and the Valir, which are women. And despite the fact that these are non-corporeal entities most of the time, they definitely have a gender. Like, that's just how they came out, so they're definitely counseled in today's world. And so in the middle are all the Valar, and on the side are the Maiar, which we'll get to in a little bit. But like at the top we have like so they're color coordinated to go with their pairings, so their partners. So we have Manwë, who was the Lord Breath of Arda, and his partner Varda, who was also known as Elbereth. And I was like, oh, Lord of the Rings thing with the
Yep.
File of Galadriel. I was so excited to read that. And then for the Maiar, if they serve, Maiar were like the servants of the Valar, so they were less in power, and they're like color coordinated to the people that they serve. So Yonwe is the standard bearer of Manwë, and Ilmare is the handmaiden of Varda. And then we have Olmo as the sea, the Valar in charge of the seas and the oceans. And then he has his Maiar person is Ossi and Union. And Ossi's more of like the coastal seas, the shallows, but Olmo was the deeps, and Union was the calming force of the seas. And then we have Owly, who was the maker of everything, and he was sort of like the craftsman. I think the dwarves are really into him. But I'm only saying that from crap I saw of Rings of Power, which I am not mentioning other than that, but which I saw it's probably wrong. But he's involved with.
Find out.
Yeah, read and find out. Yeah, it's just I'm like, oh, they mentioned that Easter egg. Ew, I feel like I'm gonna puke because that was just such a gross scene. And then his partner is Yavanna, and she's also known as Kementari. And then he was also had a Maiar servant who was Sauron. Now Sauron is outlined in the same color as Morgoth because he was actually serving two masters, and we all know about Sauron. So, and then we have the Fianturi, they were in charge of the spirits. So we have Namo, who's also called Mandos. I don't really know which of these names that they choose to use, but but both of these guys were known by the places that they lived. So Namo was known as Mandos because that's where he was, and Irmo was associated with Lorien because that's where he was at. And then Namo's partner is Very, and I think she was the weaver, and she weaves all things into the web of time. And Mando was keeper of the houses of the dead and dead spirits. He was also sort of the doomsman of the thing, so he's kind of like Hades, I guess you could say. And then Irmo was master of visions and dreams, and he lives in the gardens of Lorien with Esti, who was a gentle healer of hurts, and her gift was rest, which, if we remember, when they go to meet Galadriel in Lord of the Rings, they're in Lorien, and yeah, that is a beautiful spot. And then we have and then they're served by the Maiar Malian, who also works for, I think it was Vanna, so that's why she's outlined like that. And then we have Olorin, which is what is he? Did I put this? I did leave this out. Oh, he's one of the Maiar that serves. Oh, how do I laughing at myself? Olorin serves Nienna, and Nienna is a sister of the Fianturi. She lives alone. She's sort of grief and sorrow. But what was really interesting, I thought, in her description was that she teaches people pity and grief, and how to turn sorrow to wisdom and hope. And I thought that was really, really interesting there, because a lot of times they have like a character that is sort of like associated with all of the death and stuff like that, but not usually with hope. And it kind of reminded me of the story of Pandora, because, you know, she releases all the evils of the world, but at the bottom of the box is hope. And so she is also served by Olorin. And I remember reading that, and I'm like, it talks about how all the Maiar, they don't really walk along in Earth or Arda, and this guy does take a form. And then I was just like, it's Gandalf! It's Gandalf! It's Gandalf! I was so excited. And but let's get to the end of the list. And then there is Tulkas, who is he came to help. He was the last to come to Arda to fight Melkor, and he's a warrior. And his partner is Nessa, and she likes deer. She's sort of like an Artemis character. And then we have Oromi, and he is less strong than Tulkas, but more angry, and he loves Middle Earth, and he was Lord of the Forest. And his partner is Vanna, the ever young, the sister to Yavanna, and she's sort of a green woman kind of a thing. Oh, you can't see this. Like, let me see. I don't know if I can. Stupid. I don't know why this timeline thing is right there, but I'll have to change it next time. But yeah, so that's basically what happened with how they kind of describe everything. And do you guys have any thoughts on like the Valar and stuff?
Yeah, so a couple. So the when the Ainur the Ainur that chose to go to Arda became the Valar.
Oh, I guess we should just go back and talk about what actually happened. So, Iluvatar creates the Valar, and they're just kind of existing in this timeless world, and they can't see, they can only hear, and they're only aligned with a certain aspect of his thoughts. And then he sings this world into existence, and it's basically like they call it Arda, and it's just a vision at this time. And then he decides to, and they're like, this is so cool and everything, but it's not real. And then he makes it real, and then he can say, if you guys want to go down there, you can. And certain people make the choice to go down there, but then they realize, oh, we have to actually build this stuff. And then the first conflict of the age is they go down there, and then Melkor's there, and then they're creating things. Melkor's destructing stuff and trying to wrest power for that.
Yeah. I really thought that was the whole process of going from sound, then he creates the vision for them, and then there's the creation of the world to bring them in. And I really was fascinated by this, just because this is all something that he is doing, not just for his own personal glory, but also to out of love for his creation in the Valar. And and then also to engender a reciprocation of that love for them towards him, so that it fills them up to a point where their desire is to then go and magnify him in that creation physically. It was really kind of a fascinating process.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. And like I think the interesting part of the creation story is that, like, here's a vision and this thing, I can create this, and then they all get there and they realize, oh, we have to actually make this. Which it kind of suggests to people, like, if you want to have this beautiful, like, heavenly paradise kind of existence, you actually have to make it yourself. I thought that was nice. I think that's a good lesson there. But
A literal call to action.
yeah, yeah. Feanor, like, we got you back. I don't know if you can talk though. Let's see. It might have been his VPN. Okay. I have no idea what's going on. Like I said, we'll catch up with you on the next stream, Feanor, if you can't get on, and get your thoughts on this too. I have no idea what's going on. Like we said, we don't really like Melon, but we'll switch that out for next week. And okay, yeah, it's got to be Melon. Like, we had some wacky stuff the last time that we tried to use this, so I am sorry. Like, I know I really wanted to talk to Feanor about this, and I there's nothing on my end I can do, so we'll try to catch this up next week. But yeah, so these are the 7 or 7 pairs and of people that go and to Arda, which is their Earth, and they create it, and so they have to make it. And then I think that let me see the book here. I think it just ends the Valaquenta, or the Ainulindalë ends with the habitation of Iluvatar, and then they mentioned the children of Iluvatar were like the elves, and then the men. Then the men were the people who followed the elves. So it's already kind of setting up the ages and stuff like that. And then we're on to the Valaquenta, and that is interesting.
Yeah. Well, and the other part too that I really enjoyed. I mean, it's hard for me not to enjoy a single bit of this. I just, it's so phenomenal. But you sit there and in just a small amount of pages, and I think mine's 5 or 6 pages. It's not a lot of text, but he cycles back everything so beautifully. So each individual has this song that they're singing that's only their part that they understand. Yeah. And so when they get into creation and they start making everything and doing things, it is the presentation of the only thing that they understood in the song that's actually now a physical manifestation. Well, and the discordance wraps into that too.
One of the other things about that, though, is the discordance wraps into it, but also them engaging with other people's songs helps them learn more, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They help each other and develop each other and learn more, right? And one of the things about the discordance, right? Like Melkor with his hot and his cold. Ilúvatar starts talking to Ulmo about how Melkor's cold has created snowflakes.
Yeah.
And
Like, I
Ulmo
thought that
talks
was
about
cool.
how amazing that is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that just leads me into your list, right? Like you have Manwë at the top, then Ulmo, then Aule. And yes, technically Manwë is like the leader of them all, but those three all have in superiority over all the other Valar one thing.
Yeah, it was kind of hard to represent that because they have Manwë as like the sort of like he's the king of all of them, and then they basically
has the most understanding of the song.
Yeah, that was interesting.
And then Aule has the most knowledge, right? So Aule has as much knowledge as Melkor does, which kind of tells you something about Sauron, right?
Yeah, that is
Sauron's
interesting.
serving both the two who.
Yeah, well, and I also thought that this is the interesting thing because it is a fair presentation of evil and how evil can never really kind of stand on its own. It always falls apart.
Yeah.
Is when it presents the physical manifestation of Melkor, he's both hot and cold.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
He is this ice crowned with flame and smoke and and
yeah,
so,
he's like literally a volcanic mountain. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
Is that is the personification of him, and then it's like he chases all of the things of light, realizes he's never going to grasp that fire, and then chooses darkness.
Yeah, and that's because he never understands where that light actually is. It's not within the world. It's not within the song that was presented. It's actually in the creator itself. But it was very interesting because it's like, you can look at all the stories and you can look throughout history and see an example of this is that eventually at some point evil's going to consume itself and it can't stand on its own.
Mm-hmm. But it's also through the interaction with evil that you get like snow, you get like the creation of like different things, and like it's sort of interesting because it goes through these battles that everyone had with Melkor. He would just destroy everything, but they would create stuff, and it was sort of implied that the things that they made were different every time. And then it kind of goes back to how they talk about the relationship with Manwë and Ulmo. It's like Manwë got together with Ulmo, and then through the interaction of the air and the water, it's like you have weather. So that was kind of interesting. Does the Mucker song sound like Iron Maiden? Yes. I was very like Morgoth is like gonna be my new death metal game band name. So
I think there might actually be some band already.
Probably. If there isn't, there should be.
Yeah. I would love to see what Howard Shore could do with this with the Ainulindalë.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. I agree with that, Arda. Like I was reading this part and it talks about the Song of Melkor and it was like discordant, repetitive blaring of trumpets, and all I could think about was like mumble rap, and I'm like Tolkien was ahead of his time on that. So that was really interesting. So as we get close to there's probably definitely I totally agree with that. Like
there is
somebody's that already did that. So
yeah, I think it's either Morgoth or I think it might be Melkor if I'm not mistaken. But I probably am mistaken.
So what I thought was interesting, and maybe you guys could answer this question for me, is that when we start off the Valaquenta and it says account of the Valar and Maiar according to the lore of the Eldar, and my question is, and there's a lot of references in this part, and it goes back to whole Tolkien wanting to create like a history and mythology of the world that was brought together by disparate sources and make it like there was some verisimilitude with actual like theology and like mythology that people study. And so I was very curious, like who are the Eldar? There were a bunch of groups of people like that were mentioned in this that I had questions about. So
The Eldar are the elven people. They're the people who've lived with the Valar, and so they are the ones who know them best and have the first-hand knowledge
Oh,
and receive the stories directly.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the
Mhm.
Eldar are the elves. Oh, okay. I'm sure that we'll probably get that in the next part. It's like a read
Yeah.
and find out thing, and yeah.
Well, and
Well,
there's
it's in there when it's constantly in the beginning Eru, the one who in the Elvish tongue is named Ilúvatar, and then at the beginning of the Valar, the great among these spirits, the elves named the Valar. So it's already equating the Eldar with the elves.
Uh, okay,
yeah.
cool.
Well, and earlier when I was talking about like the literal renderings of these words, thanks to the index in this book, like if you look at Valaquenta, it's Val is power, Kenta is to say or to speak, and
That's interesting.
so it literally is where it says it's if you look at the definition of Valaquenta, it says the account of the Valar. When you literally render that out, it's the speaking of the power, or it's like a statement of of authority,
Or spoken into being. Too,
exactly.
like
And so it's like this is, and because we're looking at what you've presented here on the screen, what you're seeing is this is how this is what Ilúvatar spoke into order. And so it's just this organization. This is how the world is set up. This is how it's going to exist, and it sets it up for the Kenta Silmarillion, which is what is spoken of the shining jewels.
Yeah, that's interesting because
And
I think Tolkien just did such an astounding thing with the creation of this language because he really
absolutely
understood this sort of like the importance of like prefixes and stuff like that to determine meaning, and he really like it just boggles my mind that somebody could do that. Like it's amazing, and it's a beautiful piece of art. Yeah,
it's masterful linguistics, and like I only play around with this in biblical Greek, but I find so much meaning out of it when you can actually see all these literal renderings and how it deepens the definition. Like like Valaquenta, the account of the Valar, or Ainulindalë is the music of the Ainur, or it's literally rendered the holy making musical sounds.
Yeah, that is so cool.
And so it just takes that definition and just broadens it a little bit, that you can sit there and get into the white spaces of the word and just kind of think, oh man, there's beauty in just in the definition and the breakdown of that word, that heightens the beauty of the actual spoken. Ainulindalë, Valaquenta, Kenta Silmarillion. It's fantastic.
There we go.
Linguistics is I mean it was Tolkien's bread and butter, and so whenever he starts talking about something in terms of words and the meaning of words and the importance of words, you kind of pay attention. But I also just wanted to quickly, before I had to quickly check something, I love that Tolkien starts his work off, because this is the beginning of his entire work, with the idea of, and how often in The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit does song and poetry come up, and how important are those songs?
Oh, hell yeah! Let's talk about the freaking poems in there. It is so.
I'll be back in just a second.
Yeah, that's fine. Do whatever you need to do. So yeah, I love, my god, the songs in Lord of the Rings and poetry, and it's just so awesome because it's not just like, okay, we're just singing something and it's just whatever, like we're on the road. But like Tolkien goes all the way back to epics like Beowulf and the whole tradition of oral history, like epic poetry from like the Middle Ages and earlier, and like Iliad and Odyssey and stuff like that. And
there's actually in what we've read a couple times where it's called out where in regards to it. I think it was Olmo who's over the waters.
Yeah.
So
that was one thing that I wanted
the
to
sea,
talk about.
Yeah, the sea being carrying along the song of it. And so that's a fantastic callback, because when we look at Lord of the Rings and we see that when the elves hear seagulls, they are actually presented in a desire to go back to where they came from. And so it's a fantastic play.
Yeah, I just, that was
wording.
the other like little like Easter egg for like Lord of the Rings that I remember, and I was just like, oh my goodness, that is so freaking cool, because it's like, okay, so I'm like sitting here and I'm like, oh, okay. And some people, it's like the water like was the closest to the song of creation. So people that were touched by it were like they were very into the water, and they were drawn to the water. And I thought that was just really cool, because do you remember, like, you know, like in Lord of the Rings, Legolas hears the seagulls and he's like, oh my God, I need to go to the sea. I need to go to the sea. And they all talk about like the Grey Havens and stuff like that. And yeah.
Well, and it's funny because how he goes about it, how Legolas went about it, he resisted that urge because of his love and friendship with Gimli. And then eventually he brings Gimli over with him, because he just can't dare to be parted with this friend that he's shared so many things with. And so it's really kind of a neat thing, but others don't resist that call, and their desires always pulling into to be presented in before the Valar and the Undying Lands. It's really cool.
Yeah, so that was really cool. That was like right up there with realizing, like, you're reading about let me find that part where they start talking about like Olorin, and it says, of Melian much is told on the Kentis Silmarillion, but of Olorin that tale does not speak, for though he loved the elves, he walked among them unseen or in form as one of them, and they did not know whence came the fair visions or the promptings of wisdom that he put into their hearts. In later days, he was the friend of all the children of Ilúvatar, and took pity on their sorrows, and those who listened to him awoke from despair and put away the imaginations of darkness. And I'm like,
yeah,
dude, it's freaking Gandalf! I was freaking out, and yeah,
Gandalf, but also because he's not seen. He's this presentation of the kind of this ethereal inspiration that comes. I think that this is probably, and I could be incorrect in this, but I'm willing to bet I'm not. I think this is Tolkien's kind of nod to biblical, the Holy Spirit being that comforter, the one who presents the peace.
And it's also got some flavors of like Jesus on it too, because it's like talking about the person. He's like the one that likes to take the form of humans and help them and give them hope, and just kind of like be the sort of mouthpiece of the creator. So that was interesting. I also thought it was interesting because it was like, it's not like the Valar that's doing that. He's a Maiar, so he's like lesser in power of the Valar. So he's like, I guess that would be like an angel versus like an archangel.
Well, and when you start getting the breakdowns of these gods and demigods, I mean, this is the part where he separates from that biblical narrative and brings in the mythology into that.
I really liked the combination of both, because I'm more of a pagan in my religious leanings, though I have been going to church, and the church that we go to is a very traditional Catholic church. And I see a lot of sort of like parallels or like influences on both things, in special like the rituals and stuff. So it's interesting to see how Tolkien took those ideas too and kind of melded them. So I thought that was interesting, and I hope Gadfly comes back, because I know this is his like wheelhouse, is the sort of like like mythology, like ancient stuff. And did you like, when you read this, did you like think that Olorin was Gandalf?
I actually did not. And I don't know that I necessarily caught that until you.
I think I'm just gonna be perfectly honest and said, like, I didn't know any of the mythology until I started doing the like reviews and rewatches of like EFAP style stuff with Matt and Adam the Renaissance Nerd. and there was a whole bunch of us, and I think Dane was on there too, and some of the other White Cloaks, and a whole bunch of different people, but we all watched the whole thing. So I was the only person that didn't know anything about Tolkien, so I would always ask like Matt, because he is like freaking encyclopedia. It's like amazing how much that man knows. And he was explaining to me, and then I was asking him, he was telling me that Gandalf was a Maiar, and I was like, well, what's the Maiar? And he gave me this encyclopedia like entry of amazing information, and of course I'm just like but I remembered that part, so when I read it, it's like, oh shoot, he was the one that would walk in with the people. And that's also interesting too, because like remember when Merry and Pippin and I think Aragorn, they're going to fly, that's like around the time where they meet up with the Rohirrim, and they're talking about like the somebody walking amongst them too, and you're like, oh, that's Saruman maybe doing the same thing. So
yeah, well, he's not a
but he's not a Maiar, so he wouldn't do the same thing.
No, he's not. He's a Starry. Gandalf is.
No, Gandalf. Oh, he's a Starry, so I'm wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but
wait, I mean, I read it. Like I thought that was Gandalf.
But that's fine. I mean, that's kind of the enjoyable part about reading and rereading and kind of getting all these little different things in order. Because I mean, if you
I'm confused
read
now. Vote like Gandalf is a Maiar. Okay, Gandalf is a Maiar. Wait, is it Sauron who's a Starry? I don't know.
Well, the wizards are the wizards are a Starry. I don't
know.
Oh, well, if I'm wrong, then
read and find out, right? Read and find out. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Gandalf is of the same class of beings as Sauron, Olwe, and the Balrogs. Yeah, that was interesting because they do mention we're gonna get to the like after the Maiar since we've talked about that, and so then you have I thought it was Gandalf just because they end up talking about Sauron, and it talks about all the people that serve him, and he's got like, and it mentions the Balrogs too, so I was like, that's interesting.
That could make sense why, at least in my mind, then why Gandalf is able to sit there and stand against that kind of force of evil. So
so he says Gandalf and
so
the rest
in
of
chat,
the wizards,
in chat, there are a couple comments. I thought the Australia were Maiar. I could be wrong. So I know, like I said, I've read this once fully, and I would reference it every now and again. So this is officially my second reread, and I am by no means a Tolkien expert. I just play one on live stream sometimes.
Yeah, it's totally funny. Yeah, it's interesting. And you know what's interesting too is we might all be right, and it just might be a case of Tolkien wanting to create verisimilitude by giving a whole bunch of different names for everything. Like when we saw on the list of the Valar is that he lists a bunch of different names that people had. So that I thought that was interesting. So we might be like referencing Cetari is what the Maiar called in Middle Earth, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, good. See.
Okay.
We're all learning. So
yeah, this is fun.
I'm here to burst your bubble, and everybody else in chat is there to rebuild the bubble back for you. So.
Yeah, I'm putting this up because Feanor is helping us out here because he is like the encyclopedia here too. He was my other person. Like there are two people I went to. It's like I met Matt on stream, and then I went on Twitter, and I don't spend much time on Twitter, but I like following Feanor because he talks about Lord of the Rings all the time, and he has a bunch of cool art. And then I would start asking him questions. I actually think it was him that told me to read this like at first, so that was pretty cool. So yeah, it was the name the elves gave to wizards who are Maiar. So the Maiar and Cetari are the same thing. Okay, cool. Yeah. I'm glad we got that.
and see, and that's kind of,
we have a Doxitatic says they did not come to Middle. They did not come to Middle Earth to match might for might with Sauron as Maiar, but were limited to skills they could learn as men, albeit immortal men.
Okay. Good
point.
So that in terms of that would be kind of akin to the Jehovah manifesting himself as Christ, and not foregoing or forsaking his God nature, but limited.
Wait! You're gonna spoil the Bible for me? No, just kidding. I actually started reading that. That's a trip too. Like,
But yeah, this is such a good book, just especially because what this does. So, like, after we get done reading this, lady, I would certainly recommend going right back and diving right back into Lord of the Rings, because it will open things up to such wonderful things, like going back, reading the poems, understanding that music is kind of a central piece. This with what Gadfly brought up before he stepped away for a minute.
Yeah, I love that so much, just from being like a musician for a really long time. And then I went and became an audio engineer. And that's sort of like the melding of science of music. And so you understand that on another level, and being a writer, and then just being like a witch too. And just knowing, vibration is everything. Harmonics and frequency is like a real thing. And it's everywhere. And like science talks about it and stuff like that. So.
Yep.
And I was going to say, so we're almost to the end of the Valaquenta. So at the end, they talk about, like, what do they call it? Because they had a way of, I want to make sure I'm getting this right. So there's of the Maiar, and then of the enemies. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. I was like, okay, so High King Feanor was saying there's only ever been one entity sent to Middle Earth that was sent as a flex, and he was so powerful that he refused to join the Fellowship due to being a massive red flag. Was it that? Who was that? It's a Fengolfin or something. What's his name when they meet him? He's the elf that they meet first. Is that him? Glorfindel. Yeah, there we go. Yay! I kind of remembered something. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I'm surprised I've done so well today, because I have fibromyalgia. It's a chronic pain condition, and I've been in a lot of pain lately, and I get brain fog because my brain's processing so much pain signals that I just can't remember stuff. But yeah, Glorfindel, yeah, he was just basically like, I've killed too many Balrogs. You guys got this. Yeah, go on. But yeah, so we're at the end of the Valaquenta. We've got of the enemies, and that's when they start talking about Melkor and and then it talks about his relationship with the Noldor. And I remember from Matt, the Noldor are a group of elves, and they were the worst affected by him, and they don't even talk to him or talk about him. They don't say his name. They call him Morgoth, and he's a dark enemy of the world. And and it's very much like the Lucifer story, as like I say, like from splendor he fell, through arrogance to contempt for all things save himself, a spirit wasteful and pitiless. Yeah, liar without shame, and it just goes through all of that. And they talk about how he fought with that. And I thought the interesting thing comes at the end, and it talks about for the Maiar were many were drawn to his splendor in the ways of his greatness, and reminded in allegiance down to his darkness, and others he corrupted afterwards to his service with lies and treacherous gifts. Dreadful among these spirits were the Valarukar, the scourges of fire that the Middle Earth called Balrogs, demons of terror. So I was like, right away, we know about that. And then in the next paragraph, they talk about Sauron, and who was also Gore Arthur the Cruel, and how he was sort of a treacherous and he betrayed people. And it just sets it up for kind of what happens with Saruman and Wormtongue. And I was like, oh, that's just kind of the thing that happens. Sort of the pattern of evil.
Yeah. Do you understand what they mean by the ruinous path down into the void?
No, you want to explain that a little bit?
If you go back into the Ainulindalë, Melkor spends so much time, time when time doesn't exist,
right?
Out in the void, searching for the imperishable flame.
Oh yeah, he's just always looking for that.
Which is at that time dwells with Eru, Ilúvatar. But in the creation of the world, Ilúvatar sends the imperishable flame into the void to create the world. So Melkor and Morgoth both have this idea of seeking that imperishable flame, which you can kind of equate to being the essence, in a way, of Eru, very loosely, but you can kind of. So they're seeking to supplant Eru by gathering that flame. And they seek to do that by, one, they want to control the world, but they only want to control the world to subvert it from Eru Iluvatar. But they also want to find the imperishable flame without realizing that the world is the imperishable flame.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It reminded me of like one of the sermons that we had at church, and it was so funny because I was kind of like explaining that about like, you know, everything. It's sort of like we live in this giant Arda or whatever. Like we could go back to the story and just say, like, but we're all just little pieces. We're all like the Valar, and we just know this one thing or this one experience, and our experience is very limited compared to the great mind of, say, Iluvatar, who thought everything, who knew the music and knew everything. And I just thought, okay, that's a cool shout back to Christianity and stuff. So that's interesting.
Yeah, well, and there's an interesting thought too with it. Like, yes, he sends the sacred flame in there. Does that diminish the sacred flame that exists within him as well? So does he take a part of it and send it there, or is it just what he sends there while everything still is fully in a continuous state with him? And so, right, and so while he's out there in the void now looking for this, he'll still never achieve it, because the only way to think you could achieve it is to consume the entire creation.
Yeah,
there's no way to do that.
But even then, just consuming the creation would just destroy it.
Right.
So the only way you can actually seek the imperishable flame is by seeking Eru Iluvatar and following in his footsteps.
I thought that's really interesting.
Which he cannot do.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll never be able to do that because your part is so small that you physically incapable of kind of like seeing
all of the Ainur and the Valar follow as they can. But Melkor and Sauron and a bunch of the others choose not to. And by choosing not to follow Eru Iluvatar in their desire for the sacred flame, they are casting themselves away from, imperishable flame, not sacred flame.
Right.
Yeah,
so it's like,
you know,
so all those kind of expanding, I think, a little bit on that, Gadfly, is that because they have that small little piece, but they're faithful to that piece, they are in that instance seeking him and seeking that imperishable flame to the extent that they've been given the ability to do so, whereas Melkor cannot do that. And it's just a really fascinating thing, especially with what we know happens to Melkor later. I guess you'll have to read and find out, because I so want to spoil this, but I'm not going to. It is just it's very, very cool. And going back to what you're saying, with going back to the Ainulindalë, with what we've read in the Valaquenta, it's again an author being really good about circling back and tying these small little knots in to make a good, strong,
nice full package.
Right.
Yeah, I really enjoyed how basically you have the very like more archaic language of the Ainulindalë, and then that and I'm just like, the first time I read it, it's like, I'm gonna have to reread this because I feel like I didn't get everything. And then you go back to the Valaquenta and it's like, okay, here's everything we just covered in a different way of saying it and some more information. So that was really, really good. So I enjoyed that. So we're getting to the end of the short chapters that we covered. Do you guys have any other thoughts on it?
I have just a question for the two of you, as you are both Wheel of Time aficionados. Do you think Robert Jordan is doing a little homage with Rand's Flame in the Void?
Oh, that is a good one. I really liked that. Like,
because it's the only place Rand finds peace.
Yeah, and that is a really, really, really good point. Like, it's sort of like, because he does have the part with the flame in the pipe where he's able to light his pipe at the end, which was like, it's kind of a nod from the creator. So was that flame that was in his mind all of the time and able to like just sort of, he's able to find it in situations where like he isn't, it's sort of like a faith thing kind of for him, so it appears when he needs to calm and focus. Was maybe it was also the touch of the creator.
Very much so. Very, very much so.
That is
I do
really,
think
really
there's
cool.
a little bit of a reference there. I don't think he's implying anything more than just having a little wink and a nod, because I do think the flame in the void. I could actually probably do a video with somebody about the whole esoteric nature of that aspect, but yeah, it is
I really
one of those
like that.
neat little
And
things.
it also kind of made me think of just my own spiritual beliefs. Is I think everyone is sort of like, it's like they're like the Valar. It's like we all get our part to play, and that we're only really capable of understanding like whatever piece of the music that we're sent to play, and that we can learn more and expand when we interact with other people and make harmonic music. And I just thought that was interesting too, because maybe Melkor and stuff was always looking for the flame of creation and not realizing there was a piece of it in himself either. But sort of like the arrogance of man on there, but like in a like so. not a stupid Wheel of Prime way.
Yeah, well, and that's, I mean, and this is, I mean, we've had this discussion. I mean, come on, we're that far.
I know, we're like not even.
You're not even really at that far, because that's also like letters of introduction and stuff that we haven't.
That's true. The letters of introduction were longer than this.
That far. Yeah. This chunkier.
Yeah.
I know. I guess it's just interesting because there's so many other callbacks, and we haven't even gotten into the world of the elves. And yeah.
Yeah. We are 20 pages in.
The Silmarillion is my favorite of the Tolkien books. Like Lord of the Rings is like way up there, but the Silmarillion has so much. This is my academic mind going off and just being completely not overwhelmed, but obsessed with the sheer amount of detail and scope that goes into just the stuff that they're dealing with.
Yeah. Well, and because it's the grand history, right? And it shows, because how this book enriches The Hobbit, how it enriches Lord of the Rings, how it enriches all the other posthumous works that Tolkien did. It highlights the importance, not just within this world, but also in reflection in our own world. It's like the importance of knowing history, but not just knowing it, understanding it, and the process of it is really important, and not just to look at it from, a modern day kind of point of view, but trying to get back and say, okay, why did these people react the way that they do? And and so you look at these, the different elves, why did they do what they did? And you can't.
Yeah.
It's just, that's why it enriches the rest of the books. It's just it's a singular piece almost.
Yeah, and I went back and found this comment from the brothers Arda, who said Gandalf, though, was the wisest and greatest of all the Maiar due to being the spirit of hope. And I really like that. It's sort of about with what's her name?
Nienna.
Nienna. There's too many N ones. I almost said Nessa, but I thought that was so important, because I like that Nienna is sort of like tied with the pain and stuff, but the hope is there too.
Yeah.
Like Pandora. Okay. Here we go.
Thank you, brothers Arda.
Yeah, I thought that was really important, because all of Tolkien's work is like that. The people go through some really horrible things. There's absolute disgusting evil in the world, but like there's always hope. A hope and faith pull people through, and I thought it's such a beautiful message, and I think it's a great place to kind of like wind down our stream and stuff like that, and just reiterates why I like Lord of the Rings so much, why I like Wheel of Time so much, is because there's a message of hope, and I think that is just a super positive thing that we need in the world right now. So
it's a timeless theme, and when you don't recognize in stories good and evil, like Gadfly was speaking to earlier, the necessity of both, and the necessity to be able to discriminate between both is a very important exercise for anybody's walk in life. So it's fully enriching to do so, and not just to do so in real life, but also to do so when you're reading stories that we know that aren't true, but that you have these things there as a way of entertaining, also to engender that hope even further than what you have in your daily life.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Stories are really how we come to understand the world around us, right? And they're how we really come to understand humanity specifically, and our sort of place in the universe. And so the type of stories that people consume shape the type of person that they end up being. And so now when you have all these stories coming out of just purely selfish, self-interested people being praised as being great and good, being praised as being, like, within the stories, being praised as being the example to follow. That's how people are going to gear themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you take that away, and you refocus on these stories of hope and of actual good, of self-sacrifice,
Yeah.
and you promote those, that's the type of stuff that people start to gear themselves towards being.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That's a great way of looking at things.
Yeah.
So, just to finish up everything, do you guys have anything coming up that you'd like to talk about? I know you guys don't I know Gadfly, you haven't started your channel yet, but you do have a WordPress blog that I have linked in the comments if you want to check that out. And
I
don't know if you're
I'm going to be restructuring that to be focusing on my own stuff, and then I'm trying to set up a little bit of a recording area here.
Oh, that's awesome.
Record some stuff, so it's coming along, but
yeah,
family and stuff are the priorities. So
yeah, that's the stuff
Amen.
I'm having now. I recently moved, and I'm just focusing on the relationship that I'm just starting. So YouTube isn't my first thing, but I'm trying to get it back into it because I like talking about this, and I think it's good and it's important to talk about this. So
yeah.
So I'm hearing there's something about a script, a Wheel of Time script.
Oh, I've been meaning to write that since I think I started doing the Discord, and I was like that. So that is one of my there's 2 long-term projects that I want to do. I want to write an adaptation of maybe a first episode, or do a because my background is film and TV. I was going to do screenwriting and development, and I really like the development part of it, which is really you're kind of being a coach to writers and stuff. And I just didn't work out for me, and I've always wanted to do a script for the Wheel of Time, or at least do a series arc, and seeing can this actually be done in the kind of 8 episode thing that streamers do and stuff like that. And then the other thing I want to do is write how I think they should have adapted House of the Dragon, but they're going to take me some time to research, and my pain levels need to come way down before I can get that level of work thing. But it's hard, and it just takes time. So hopefully we'll get that done soon. I know I am going to also be hopefully publishing tonight my review of episode 1 of season 2 of Wheel of Time. And yeah, and do you have anything coming up, Nathan?
Well, I do believe Steve on Prophet of the Dragon is still doing an unhype on Wednesday at 8 p.m. So I'll probably be on that.
He did some epic streams this week where I wasn't there for the entire thing, but Alex was, and he was right in the background, and they knocked it out of the park. So
they did, they really did. I'm debating whether or not I really want to put forth the effort and anger into doing anything with the first few episodes, because it's just better
caring about trash.
I don't know that I want to do that. So if I do, it'll be on my channel.
Trash?
What's that?
they're all trash. So which one are we specifically talking about?
No, yeah, you
Right.
stop caring about all the trash in general, like the massive slut bucket that is that show. But that's why
Yeah.
I'm doing this, because I like talking about good things and reminding people what is good. And yeah,
That's exactly it. And then I think in terms of episode 4 for the Wheel of Crap, I think we're still doing the live stream on Discord, and then the post
that is
view.
weird. That is so weird. It's like, yeah, this was going to start 2 minutes ago. That is very strange.
That is.
Yeah, I think part of I don't know if that's a YouTube thing or the fact that I share this streaming service with the White Cloaks, and the White Cloaks are 3 people that don't always talk to everyone. So there's some weird things that go on when I try to set up a stream, and then it'll have me as like pips or something, or like I came and not all of my like materials were where they should have been. But I'm gonna get my own stuff so I don't have to worry about that, and hopefully it'll work better so we can get Feanor on. Like, I am very glad that he stayed on, and I thank you for Feanor for doing this. And I'm really, really, really sorry about not being able to get you on with us. So we'll have to kind of catch up when we get here. So
yeah. But I think the post-mortem episode 4 live stream is going to be on Salty Traveling Seas channel this week. Next week is when it'll be on the White Cloaks channel, and then it's going to cycle through those 3 channels until the season's mercifully over. So that's kind of where I'll be with all of it, and then in a couple weeks, the next section of the Silmarillion.
Yeah, definitely. So we're not going to stream next weekend, but we'll do 2 weeks from now, which should be the 17th of September. And then we're going to do the beginning of the days and the flight of the Noldor. So with that, I am going to play us out with our cool outro. Hopefully this works. Thanks you guys again for coming, and we'll see you guys next time.